My wife emptied our $47,000 emergency fund for her sister's multi-level marketing business while I was deployed overseas, so I changed every lock. That was 8 months ago. She still leaves flowers on the doorstep. Every morning at 5:47 a.m. When I was in college, I worked as an intern at the State Panera College. Besides working as a mental health tech at the state psych hospital, I was also an RA for the college. I helped students with dorm problems, made sure everyone followed the rules, and stuff like that. We will call him Robert. Robert asked if I would come get a girl out of his room as she was refusing to leave. I advised Robert that I was not his personal bouncer, and he would need to handle his romantic dalliances himself. He explained that was not the case. He did not know the person. In his room, he had left to go take a shower down the hall, communal showers in the men's dorms, and instead of having to carry the room key with him, he left a roll of toilet paper wedged in the door to keep it from closing. They locked automatically whenever shut. Safety measures. When he returned, there was a girl laying on his bed with her books strewn about, as if she was studying. Upon seeing him enter the room, she began screaming and throwing books and pens at him and demanding he get out of her room. I knew Robert, and he was not one prone to lie or exaggerate, so I went to check. Sure enough, there she was. I told her she needed to leave. She protested, stating that she was in her room. I advised that considering it was a male dormitory, I doubted her claim. I helped her pack up her stuff, walked her up to the second floor, which had the main entrance to the door, walked her outside, and sent her on her way. I advised Robert that I needed him to sign an incident report. He followed me back to the office, still wearing his towel, waited while I filled out the report, signed it, and left. He was not gone 10 minutes before returning, still in the towel. Apparently, when we walked the girl out, we forgot to close the door completely behind us, and she double-backed on us, came through the back door, and resumed her study position. This time, I meant I was going to be prepared. I locked every door leading in or out of the dormitory and left a sticky note on the door advising there was a security risk and not to let any unknown or unaccompanied females into the dormitory. Next, I called campus security and advised them to be waiting at the front door to escort this individual away from the building. Then Robert and I went back to his room. Once again, I helped her pack her things and escorted her out the front door. Campus security had not yet arrived, so this girl tried every door like before, but all of them were locked. She then went window to window on the ground floor, knocking to see if anyone would open the door for her. Finally, campus security arrived and captured her. The girl had a valid college ID, so we looked up her residential dorm. It just so happened that she had been assigned as a roommate to a friend of mine. I called my friend to inquire about the girl. My friend said that she had only met the girl one time, and that was the first day of fall semester. The girl mumbled something, grabbed her enormous book bag, left the room, and had not been back. We were currently in November. Not knowing what else to do, campus security delivered her back to her assigned dormitory, walked her to her assigned room, and emphasized over and over how this was her room, and she had better not be found in the men's dormitory again. The girl would argue, then become silent. Argue, then become silent. I thought that would be the end of the story. No. The next morning, I was awakened by the phone. It was the dean of students asking me if I was there on duty last night. I was advised that I was. He asked if I could come to the dormitory where this girl supposedly lived right now. It was 7:30 a.m. I was scared to death. What the hell had happened? I threw on yesterday's clothes and rushed across campus. The morning air was cold, and I could see my breath as I jogged toward the women's dormitory. My mind raced with possibilities. Had she hurt someone? Had she hurt herself? The dean wouldn't call me at this hour unless something serious had happened. When I arrived at the dormitory, I saw 2 campus security vehicles parked outside. Officer Martinez stood by the entrance, his weathered face showing more concern than I'd ever seen in my 3 years working with him. He'd been doing campus security for 20 years, and nothing rattled him. Today was different. Ethan, he nodded as I approached. 3rd floor, room 312. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The hallway was crowded with students in pajamas and robes, all craning their necks to see what was happening. 2 more security officers stood outside room 312. Through the open door, I could see Dean Morrison pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear. The room looked like a tornado had hit it. Books were scattered everywhere, papers torn and crumpled on the floor. One of the beds had been stripped completely, the mattress flipped against the wall, but what caught my attention was the girl from last night, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the chaos, calmly highlighting passages in a textbook as if nothing was wrong. Dean Morrison saw me and ended his call. He stepped into the hallway, pulling me aside. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his shirt was untucked on one side. "This is the 3rd room this morning," he said quietly. "We found her in room 312 at 6 a.m. when the actual resident came back from an early morning run. Before security could respond, she'd somehow gotten into room 287. When they went to remove her from there, she was already in room 243. I stared at him. How is that possible? She knows the building layout better than our own staff, uses maintenance corridors, unlocked windows, even the old laundry chute that's supposed to be sealed. He rubbed his temples. But that's not the worst part. Martinez joined us in the hallway. He handed the dean a manila folder. Inside were incident reports, dozens of them, dating back to early September. "We've been getting complaints for months," Martinez said. "Different dorms, different rooms, always the same pattern. Student comes back to find her in their room, insisting she lives there. We've had reports from Whitman Hall, Jefferson Dorm, even the graduate housing complex." I flipped through the reports. The dates went back to the second week of fall semester. My stomach dropped as I counted them. 12 different rooms across 5 different dormitories. "Why didn't anyone connect these?" I asked. The dean's face flushed. "We thought they were pranks. Different buildings, different security teams. No one put it together until last night when you called in the incident. I had my assistant pull all reports matching the description." Through the doorway, I watched the girl turn a page in her textbook, completely absorbed in her studying. She looked so normal, so focused, just a college student preparing for exams, except she was sitting in the middle of someone else's destroyed room at 7:45 in the morning. "What do we do?" I asked. "We need to find out where she's actually been living," the dean said. "Her parents are driving up from downstate. They should be here by noon." Martinez cleared his throat. "There's something else. We pulled security footage from last night after you called. After we dropped her at her assigned room, she waited exactly 7 minutes, then left. We have her on camera going building to building, trying doors." He pulled out his phone and showed us the footage. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. The girl moved methodically down a hallway, testing each door handle. When she found a locked door, she moved to the next one without hesitation. When she found an unlocked door, she'd peer inside, then either enter or continue searching. "She's not random," Martinez continued. "She checks specific rooms in a specific order, like she has a schedule." The dean's phone rang. He answered it, his face growing paler with each word. "Another one? Wellington Hall? We'll be right there." He hung up and looked at us. "She's in Wellington Hall now, room 506. The student woke up to find her sitting at his desk, using his computer. But she's right here," I said, pointing to room 312. Martinez checked the room. The girl was gone. The textbook she'd been reading lay open on the floor, highlighter still uncapped beside it. We ran to Wellington Hall, a 10-minute walk made in 5. By the time we arrived, she was gone again. The student, a freshman named Ken, was visibly shaken. "I woke up and she was just there," he said, typing on my laptop like she owned it. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was working on her paper. Her paper, on my computer. When I told her to leave, she packed up my laptop and tried to take it with her. The dean pulled me aside. "I need you to help us track her down. You know the buildings, you know the students. We need to find where she's been staying." We spent the next 3 hours following her trail. She appeared in room after room, always studying, always insisting she belonged there. Each time security arrived, she was already gone. Students reported seeing her in the library, the student union, even the academic buildings, always carrying that enormous book bag. Finally, around 11 a.m., we got a break. A librarian called security to report strange noises coming from the old reference section in the basement. Martinez, the dean, and I descended the narrow stairs to investigate. The basement was dimly lit, filled with outdated encyclopedias and bound periodicals that no one used anymore. We followed the sound of rustling papers to the back corner, where the old movable shelves created a maze of narrow aisles. Behind the last row of shelves, we found it. She had created a living space in a gap between the shelves and the wall. Textbooks were stacked to create makeshift furniture. A sleeping bag was rolled in the corner. The walls were covered with papers, hundreds of them, each containing room numbers, times, and what looked like schedules. Room 312, MWF 8 to 10 a.m., T/TH 2 to 5 p.m. Room 287, daily 6 to 8 a.m. Room 506, MW 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. She had mapped out when each room would be empty, when students had classes, when they went to work or practice. Some entries had notes: leaves door unlocked during Tuesday showers, window broken, easy access, roommate travels weekends. But the most disturbing discovery was a plastic bin filled with student IDs. There must have been 40 or 50 of them, all belonging to different students. Some were current, some dated back years. Martinez picked up one of the IDs. Jesus Christ. Some of these students graduated already. The dean was speechless, staring at the elaborate setup. I noticed notebooks stacked in the corner and picked one up. The pages were filled with journal entries, but they didn't make sense. Each entry was written as if she was a different person, living in a different room. October 3rd. Had a great day in my room. 214. Roommate was gone so I could study in peace. October 3rd. Tough day in my room. 367. The heater is broken again. Need to call maintenance. October 3rd. Love my new room. 489. The view of the quad is perfect. All the same date, all different rooms, all written as if she lived in each one. Found her, Martinez's voice crackled over the radio. Computer lab in the science building, 2nd floor. We left 2 officers to document the space and rushed to the science building. She was exactly where Martinez said, typing furiously at a computer. When she saw us approaching, her face cycled through emotions: confusion, anger, fear, then back to confusion. "You're in my spot," she said calmly. "I always use this computer." "Miss, you need to come with us," the dean said gently. "Your parents are here to see you." Her face went blank. "My parents?" "Yes, they're waiting in my office." She stood up slowly, gathering her things. As she packed her bag, I noticed her hands were shaking. "I need to go back to my room first," she said. "Room 312. I left my textbook there." "Which room?" the dean asked carefully. 312, she repeated, then paused. "No, wait. 280, show me." Or was it? Her voice trailed off, and she looked genuinely confused. "I can't remember which room is mine." Martinez stepped forward. "We'll help you figure it out. Just come with us." As we walked across campus, she kept stopping, looking at each dormitory we passed. "I live there," she'd say, pointing to one building, then immediately contradict herself. "No, there. That's my window. 3rd floor." By the time we reached the administration building, she was crying silently, clutching her bag like a lifeline. Her parents were waiting in the dean's office, a middle-aged couple who looked exhausted and worried. When they saw their daughter, the mother broke down. "Sarah, honey," her mother said. "We've been so worried." Sarah. After all this time, I finally knew her name. The dean closed the door, giving them privacy. Through the window, I could see Sarah's parents trying to comfort her, but she kept pulling away, insisting she needed to get back to her room for a test tomorrow. Martinez and I waited in the hallway. After about 20 minutes, the dean emerged with Sarah's parents. Her father's eyes were red. "She hasn't been the same since last year," he said quietly. "Her roommate. There was an incident. Sarah found her. After that, she couldn't stay in that room. We thought switching dorms would help, but..." Her mother picked up the story. "She called us every night for weeks, each time from a different room, insisting it was hers. We contacted the college, but they said she was just having adjustment issues. Normal freshman stuff." The dean shifted uncomfortably. I could see Martinez's jaw tighten. "When did she stop calling?" I asked. "October," her father said. "We thought that meant she was doing better. Adjusting. We had no idea." Through the window, I could see Sarah arranging and rearranging items from her bag on the dean's desk, setting them up like she was preparing to study. Even now, she was trying to make the space hers. The parents had brought a therapist with them, a doctor, Winslow, who specialized in trauma-related dissociative disorders. She spent an hour with Sarah while we waited. When she emerged, her expression was grim. "She's created an elaborate delusion to cope with trauma," Dr. Winslow explained. "In her mind, she lives in all these rooms because she can't bear to acknowledge the room where she found her roommate. She's fragmenting her identity across multiple spaces to avoid confronting that single traumatic location." "Will she be okay?" her mother asked. "With proper treatment, yes, but she needs inpatient care immediately. This level of dissociation is severe." The dean made arrangements for Sarah to be transported to a psychiatric facility. As the campus EMTs prepared to take her, she looked directly at me. "I know you," she said. "You helped me with my room last night. Thank you for walking me home." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Which room do I live in?" she asked me, and for a moment, she looked so young and lost. "I can't remember which one is mine. The doctors are going to help you figure that out," I said gently. She smiled sadly. "I just want to go home." As they led her away, her massive book bag left behind, I thought about all the rooms she'd claimed as her own, all the spaces she'd tried to inhabit to escape one unbearable memory. The dean stood beside me, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "We failed her," he said quietly. "All those reports, all those complaints. We should have connected the dots months ago." Martinez was less forgiving. "You knew something was wrong and did nothing." The dean didn't argue. Later, I learned that the college had indeed received multiple reports from Sarah's parents about her behavior, but had filed them away as routine adjustment concerns. The liability of acknowledging a serious mental health crisis had seemed greater than the risk of ignoring it. Over the next few days, the full scope of Sarah's situation came to light. Security footage revealed she'd been living in the library basement since late September. The student IDs she'd collected were from rooms she'd entered. She'd take them as proof she belonged there. Some students had reported lost IDs but never connected it to the strange girl they'd found in their rooms. Her journal entries painted a heartbreaking picture. Each personality she'd created for each room was another attempt to be someone who hadn't experienced that trauma. In room 312, she was a pre-med student. In room 287, an English major. In room 506, she was studying psychology. Each identity carefully crafted to be anyone but the girl who'd found her roommate hanging from the ceiling fan on a Tuesday morning in September. The college held emergency meetings about improving mental health services and security protocols. The dean quietly submitted his resignation, effective at the end of the semester. Martinez was promoted to head of security and implemented new procedures for tracking and connecting incident reports across campus buildings. I stayed in touch with Sarah's parents. They sent updates every few weeks. The treatment was slow but progressing. She'd stopped claiming multiple rooms and was beginning to process her trauma. The doctors were optimistic, but warned it would be a long journey. The last update came in May, just before graduation. Sarah was doing better, living in a supervised facility, taking online classes. She'd never returned to our campus. Too many triggers, too many memories scattered across too many rooms. But she was finding her way back to herself, one day at a time. Her mother included a note Sarah had written. "Tell the RA thank you for being kind that night. I know I scared everyone. I was just trying to find somewhere safe to be." I kept that note. It reminded me that behind every strange incident, every policy violation, every every disruption to normal campus life, there might be a person desperately trying to cope with something unbearable. Sarah had turned an entire campus into her coping mechanism, claiming every room as home because she couldn't face the one room that had broken her. The empty spaces in the library basement were cleaned out and repurposed. The movable shelves were reorganized. But sometimes, when I was doing rounds late at night, I'd think about Sarah and all her rooms, all her carefully mapped schedules, all her attempts to be anywhere but where the pain lived. She'd been right about one thing. She did live in all those rooms in a way. She'd left pieces of herself scattered across campus, fragments of identity in every space she'd claimed. And maybe that's what we all do when trauma hits. We spread ourselves thin, trying to exist everywhere except the place that hurts. The college implemented new policies after what everyone came to call the Sarah incident. But policies couldn't change the fundamental truth her story revealed. Sometimes the systems meant to protect us become the very things that enable our destruction. Sarah had fallen through every crack, slipped past every safeguard, because it was easier to file her away as a problem than to see her as a person in crisis. The weeks following Sarah's hospitalization brought an uncomfortable scrutiny to our campus. State inspectors arrived unannounced, interviewing staff and students about security protocols. I found myself answering questions about that night repeatedly, each retelling making me notice details I'd missed before. Martinez implemented his new tracking system immediately. Every incident, no matter how minor, went into a centralized database. He recruited me to help train other RAs on recognizing patterns. During one session, a sophomore RA named Katharina raised her hand. "What if we'd caught this earlier?" she asked. "Could we have prevented it?" Martinez's expression hardened. "We'll never know, but we can prevent the next one." The training revealed disturbing gaps in our system. RAs from different buildings had never compared notes before. We discovered at least 3 other students exhibiting concerning behaviors that had gone unreported. One junior had been sleeping in the 24-hour study rooms for weeks. Another had been caught multiple times trying to access restricted areas. Each incident had been handled individually, filed away, forgotten. Dean Morrison's replacement arrived in December. Dr. McCatherine came from a small liberal arts college with a reputation for progressive mental health policies. She called an all-hands meeting her first week. "I've reviewed the Sarah incident thoroughly," she announced to the packed auditorium. "What happened here was systemic failure at every level. We're restructuring how we handle student welfare, starting immediately." The changes came fast. Mandatory mental health check-ins for all students. Weekly cross-departmental meetings to discuss concerning patterns. A new position created specifically to coordinate between residents' life, security, and counseling services. They hired Sebastian, a clinical social worker with experience in crisis intervention. I met with Sebastian during his first week. He'd set up his office in the Student Services building, the walls already covered with resource posters and emergency contact information. "Tell me about that night," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Not the official report, what you actually saw." I described Sarah's certainty that each room was hers, the way she'd arranged her belongings as if she'd lived there for months. Sebastian took notes, occasionally asking for clarification. "The schedule she created," he said finally. "That level of organization suggests she was highly functional despite her dissociation. She wasn't randomly entering rooms. She was trying to maintain a routine, multiple routines actually." His observation stuck with me. Sarah hadn't been chaotic or destructive until someone challenged her delusion. In her mind, she was just a student trying to study, trying to maintain normalcy across fractured identities. The new protocols meant more work for everyone. RAs now had to file detailed reports for any unusual behavior. Security increased their rounds. The counseling center extended their hours. Not everyone appreciated the changes. "This is overkill," Robert complained during a floor meeting. "One incident, and now we're all under surveillance." Other students echoed his frustration. The new keycard system tracked every entry and exit. Guest policies became stricter. The casual atmosphere that had defined campus life was replaced by constant vigilance. But the changes revealed problems we'd been ignoring. Within the first month, Sebastian's team identified 7 students in crisis, a freshman who hadn't attended classes in 3 weeks, a senior who'd been forging meal plan signatures to feed herself after losing her job, a sophomore who'd been living in his car after a fight with his roommate. Each case required careful intervention. I watched Sebastian work, marveling at his ability to connect with students who'd been invisible to the rest of us. He never forced help on anyone, instead creating opportunities for them to reach out when ready. One evening in January, I was doing rounds when I noticed a light in the old reference section of the library. My chest tightened. Sarah's makeshift home had been cleared out months ago, but the memory lingered. I descended the stairs carefully, flashlight in hand. The basement felt different now, brighter, with new LED fixtures replacing the old fluorescents. The movable shelves had been reorganized, creating wider aisles and better visibility. In the back corner where Sarah had lived, I found a junior named Alexander. He'd spread his belongings across the floor, not hidden like Sarah's had been, but arranged as if he was simply studying in an unusual spot. When he saw me, he didn't run or act defensive. He just looked tired. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," he said quietly. "I just needed somewhere quiet." I sat down across from him, remembering Sebastian's approach. What's going on? Alexander's story spilled out gradually. His roommate played music until 3 a.m. every night. The study rooms were always full. He'd discovered the basement by accident and had been coming here for weeks, just for a few hours of peace. I'm not like that girl, he said quickly. I know this isn't my room. I just need somewhere to focus. I helped him pack up his things and walked him to Sebastian's office. Even at 9 p.m., Sebastian was there, door open, ready to help. As I left them talking, I realized this was what we'd missed with Sarah, the chance to intervene before a small problem became a crisis. The spring semester brought new challenges. Word had spread about the Sarah incident, and prospective students' parents asked pointed questions during tours. Applications dipped slightly. The administration struggled to balance transparency with damage control. Dr. McCatherine held firm. We don't hide from our failures, she said during a staff meeting. We learn from them. She instituted monthly forums where students could voice concerns directly to administration. The first few were sparsely attended, but word spread that actual changes followed these discussions. Soon, the rooms were packed. During one forum, a senior stood up. My friend dropped out last year, she said. She'd been struggling, but none of us knew how to help. The counseling center had a 3-week wait. By the time she got an appointment, it was too late. Stories like hers emerged at every forum. Students who'd fallen through cracks, who'd struggled in silence, who'd developed elaborate coping mechanisms because they couldn't access proper help. Sarah hadn't been an anomaly. She'd been the most visible symptom of a diseased system. Martinez and I developed a presentation about recognizing warning signs. We traveled to other colleges, sharing what we'd learned. The story always began the same way. A student asked me to remove someone from his room. At one presentation, a security officer from another school approached me afterward. We had something similar, he said quietly. A student who'd been living in our computer lab for a month. We just kicked him out, banned him from campus, never followed up. These stories accumulated, painting a picture of widespread institutional blindness. How many Sarahs were out there, creating elaborate delusions to cope with trauma? How many colleges were filing away warning signs instead of connecting dots? In March, I received a letter forwarded from the dean's office. Sarah's handwriting was neater now, more controlled. Dear Ethan, it began. I'm writing to apologize for that night. I know I scared Robert and caused so much trouble. I'm doing better now. I have my own room at the facility, and I only think it's mine, no one else's. That's progress, my doctor says. She went on to describe her treatment, the slow work of integrating her fractured identities. She was taking online classes, just 2 for now, but it was a start. She ended with a question that made my throat tight. Do you think I'll ever be able to come back to a regular college? I miss having a real room, one that's actually mine. I wrote back, choosing my words carefully. I told her about the changes on campus, how her story had led to help for other students. I didn't minimize what had happened, but I tried to convey hope. Her response came a month later. It's strange to think something good came from my breakdown. I wish I could have just asked for help, but I didn't know how to say, I can't stay in any room because they all remind me of finding her. So I tried to stay in every room instead. The academic year wound down with a mixture of exhaustion and cautious optimism. The new systems were working mostly. We'd identified and helped dozens of students who might have otherwise spiraled, but the work was relentless and the weight of responsibility heavier than before. During my final RA meeting of the year, Dr. McCatherine surprised us with news. Sarah's parents have established a fund, she announced. They want to ensure no student goes without mental health support due to financial constraints or system failures. The Sarah Fund, as it came to be known, would provide emergency counseling, temporary housing assistance, and crisis intervention services. Her parents had transformed their daughter's breakdown into a lifeline for others. That summer, I stayed on campus to help train the new RAs. The story of Sarah became part of orientation, a cautionary tale with a complex moral. We role-played scenarios, discussed warning signs, practiced compassionate intervention. One new RA, a sophomore named Sasha, asked the question that haunted me. How do you balance helping someone with protecting everyone else? I thought about that night, how I'd focused on removing Sarah from Robert's room without considering why she was there. You don't balance it, I said finally. You do both. You protect the immediate safety of others, while also recognizing the humanity of the person in crisis. Martinez had recruited several students who'd been helped by the new system to share their stories with the new RAs. Alexander talked about finding support before his basement, studying turned into something more serious. Others described how early intervention had prevented their situations from escalating. The difference, one student said, was that someone saw me as a person who needed help, not a problem to be solved. As August approached, I prepared for my senior year with mixed feelings. The campus looked the same physically, but the culture had shifted. There was more awareness, more support, but also more structure and less spontaneity. Some students chafed at the new restrictions, while others thrived in the additional safety net. I received one final update about Sarah before the new semester began. She'd completed her online courses successfully and was considering transferring to a small college near her treatment facility. She'd integrated most of her fractured identities and could now talk about her trauma without dissociating. She still has difficult days, her mother wrote. Sometimes she stands in her doorway, unsure if the room is really hers, but she's learning to ground herself in the present, to trust that she belongs where she is. The letter included a photo, Sarah standing in front of her new apartment, key in hand, smiling tentatively. She looked different from the girl I'd found in Robert's room that night, more solid somehow, less likely to fragment and scatter across multiple spaces. As new students arrived for orientation, I watched them navigate the residence halls with fresh eyes, each one carrying their own potential trauma, their own coping mechanisms, their own risk of falling through cracks. But now, we had better nets to catch them, stronger systems to support them. The Sarah incident had exposed our failures, but it had also forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about how institutions handle mental health. We couldn't undo what had happened to her, couldn't give her back the months she'd spent living in borrowed rooms, creating elaborate schedules to avoid confronting her pain. But we could do better for the next student who couldn't bear to stay in their assigned room. We could recognize the warning signs, connect the dots, offer help, before someone built an entire alternate reality to escape their trauma. During the opening ceremony, Dr. McCatherine spoke about the previous year's challenges and changes. She didn't mention Sarah by name, but her presence permeated the speech. "We are not just an institution of learning," she said. "We are a community responsible for each other's well-being. When one of us struggles, we all must respond with compassion and action." As I walked back to my dorm that evening, I passed the library. The basement windows had been updated with new safety glass, harder to access from outside. The security cameras were more visible now, their red lights blinking steadily. These physical changes were just the surface. The real transformation was in how we saw each other, how we responded to distress, how we refused to file away warning signs as isolated incidents. I thought about Sarah's question, would she ever be able to come back to a regular college? The answer was complicated. The campus that had failed her no longer existed. In its place was something more structured, but also more supportive, less casual, but more caring. Maybe that was the real lesson of the Sarah incident. Sometimes systems have to break completely before they can be rebuilt properly. Sometimes it takes one person's elaborate delusion to reveal the collective delusion that everything was fine. As I entered my dorm, I noticed the new RA on duty. She was alert, watchful, trained to recognize signs we'd once ignored. The casual atmosphere of previous years was gone, replaced by vigilant care. It wasn't perfect. No system could prevent every crisis, catch every struggling student, heal every trauma. But we were trying now, really trying, in ways we hadn't before. The memory of Sarah claiming every room as her own had transformed how we understood belonging on campus. She'd shown us that home wasn't just a physical space, but a psychological state, and that when trauma shattered that state, people would go to extraordinary lengths to reconstruct it. Her legacy lived in every policy change, every intervention, every student who received help before their coping mechanism became a crisis. She'd turned an entire campus into her coping mechanism, but in doing so, she'd forced the campus to become a better mechanism for coping with students in crisis. As I prepared for my final year, I carried the weight of that night with me, not as guilt or regret, but as a reminder of the complex humanity behind every policy violation, every strange incident, every disruption to normal life. Sarah had been right about one thing. She had lived in all those rooms, not physically, but psychologically, spreading herself across campus to avoid the one unbearable truth. Now, slowly, she was learning to live in just one room again, to trust that it was truly hers. And we were learning too, all of us, how to create spaces where students could feel safe enough to stay in their assigned rooms, to ask for help when those rooms became unbearable, to trust that the institution meant to protect them would actually do so. The transformation wasn't complete. There were still gaps, still students who might slip through, still traumas we couldn't prevent or predict. But we were no longer filing away warning signs, no longer treating symptoms as isolated incidents, no longer prioritizing liability over humanity. As the semester began, I knew there would be new challenges, new crises, new students who couldn't bear to stay where they were assigned. But now, we had better tools to help them, stronger networks to catch them, more compassionate responses to their pain. The girl who'd lived in everyone's room had taught us that belonging was both more fragile and more resilient than we'd understood. She'd shown us the extraordinary lengths people would go to feel safe, to maintain routine, to avoid confronting trauma. Most importantly, she'd forced us to see that behind every strange behavior was a human being trying desperately to cope with something unbearable, and that our job was not just to maintain order, but to recognize and respond to that humanity. The campus looked the same as students unpacked and settled into their rooms, but underneath the familiar surface, everything had changed. We were watching now, really watching, ready to help, before someone felt the need to claim every room as their own, because they couldn't bear to stay in the one that was actually theirs. The semester began with an incident that made everyone realize our new systems weren't foolproof. A freshman named Xander had been discovered living in the campus chapel's storage closet. Unlike Sarah, he wasn't delusional, just desperate. His financial aid had fallen through, and he'd been too ashamed to ask for help. Sebastian handled it personally, arranging emergency housing and connecting Xander with the Sarah Fund. But the incident highlighted that even our improved safety nets had holes. Dr. McCatherine called an emergency meeting. We're still reactive, she said bluntly. We need to be proactive. The solution came from an unexpected source. Katharina, now a junior RA, proposed a peer mentorship program. Students who'd experienced housing insecurity or mental health crises would be paired with incoming freshmen showing early warning signs. Who better to recognize the patterns, she argued. The program launched within weeks. Alexander became one of the first mentors, using his experience to help students who gravitated toward isolated study spaces. He knew the difference between needing quiet and hiding from reality. I watched him work with a freshman who'd been spending entire nights in the engineering lab. Alexander didn't lecture or report him immediately. Instead, he shared his own story, normalized the struggle, and gradually connected the student with resources. The approach worked. By October, we'd identified and assisted 15 students who might have otherwise developed more serious issues. Each intervention was documented in Martinez's system, patterns analyzed, responses refined. But success brought new challenges. Some students began gaming the system, exaggerating problems to access emergency funds or special accommodations. Sebastian spent hours sorting genuine crises from manipulation. It's a good problem to have, he told me during one of our weekly check-ins. Better than missing the real cases. The real test came in November, almost exactly a year after Sarah's breakdown. A sophomore named Sebastian, no relation to our Sebastian, was found in 3 different rooms within a single night. The parallels were unmistakable. Martinez called me immediately. We need you at Jefferson Hall. Now, I arrived to find a scene eerily reminiscent of the previous year. Sebastian sat calmly in someone else's room, textbooks spread across the desk. But there were differences. He wasn't claiming the room was his. He wasn't violent when confronted. He simply seemed confused about where he was supposed to be. I know this isn't my room, he told us. I keep forgetting which one is mine. They all look the same. Dr. McCatherine arrived within minutes, Sebastian close behind. They approached Sebastian with practiced calm, asking gentle questions about his recent experiences. Had he been sleeping, eating, taking any new medications? The story emerged in fragments. Sebastian had been prescribed ADH medication, but had been doubling his doses to study for midterms. The sleep deprivation and stimulant abuse had triggered a dissociative episode. He genuinely couldn't remember which room was his. Unlike with Sarah, we had protocols in place. Sebastian contacted the counseling center's on-call psychiatrist. Martinez pulled Sebastian's housing records. I helped gather his scattered belongings while maintaining a calm presence. Within an hour, Sebastian was in the campus health center, his roommate contacted, his professors notified about potential exam accommodations. The system worked exactly as designed. This is what we missed with Sarah, Martinez said as we watched the ambulance leave. Early intervention, proper protocols, immediate response. But the incident sparked debate on campus. Some students felt we'd overreacted, that Sebastian just needed sleep and would have been fine. Others worried about the surveillance state we'd created, where every unusual behavior triggered institutional response. The student newspaper ran an editorial titled, "The Sarah Effect, Have We Gone Too Far?" It questioned whether our hypervigilance was creating more anxiety than it prevented. The piece went viral, drawing responses from colleges nationwide grappling with similar issues. Dr. McCatherine addressed the controversy head-on at the next campus forum. She brought data, intervention statistics, success stories, the number of crises prevented, but she also acknowledged the concerns. We're walking a tightrope, she admitted, between neglect and overreach. We won't always get it right, but we'll keep adjusting, keep listening, keep trying. The forum erupted in discussion. Students shared their perspectives, some grateful for the support, others feeling suffocated by it. One senior stood up near the end. I was one of the students Sebastian's team helped last year, she said. I'd been sleeping in my car for a month before someone noticed. The old system would have let me graduate homeless. I'll take overreach over neglect any day. Her words carried weight, but the debate continued online and in dorm rooms. The campus remained divided on where to draw the line between support and surveillance. In December, I received an unexpected visit. Sarah's parents appeared at my dorm, looking healthier than they had the previous year. They'd driven up to finalize some paperwork for the Sarah Fund and wanted to thank me personally. She asks about you, her mother said. Wonders if you still do rounds, if you still help students who get lost. They showed me recent photos. Sarah looked different, more present, more grounded. She was living in a small apartment near her treatment facility, taking classes at a community college, working part-time at a bookstore. She's thinking about studying social work, her father said. Wants to help people who've been where she's been. The visit was brief, but meaningful. They left me with a letter from Sarah, which I read alone in my room. Ethan, it began. I remember more now. Not just that night, but the months before. The way I'd stand outside buildings, trying to remember if I lived there. The panic when nothing felt like home. I'm writing to tell you that I finally have a room that's mine. Just one, and that's enough. She went on to describe her recovery, the slow process of integration, the daily work of staying grounded. She thanked me for treating her with dignity that night, even as she'd been at her most lost. I know the college has changed because of what happened, she wrote. I hope it's helping people. I hope no one else has to create 100 homes because they can't bear to stay in one. The letter ended with a simple question. Do you think I'm ready to come back? Not to Panera, but to a real college? My therapist says I am, but I wanted to ask someone who saw me at my worst. I struggled with how to respond. The truth was complicated. She'd made remarkable progress, but returning to a traditional college environment carried risks. I wrote back honestly, suggesting she start slowly, maybe one class on campus while living in her stable apartment. Her reply came 2 weeks later. She'd enrolled in a single course at the state university near her home, Sociology 101. She was terrified, but determined. I have strategies now, she wrote. When I feel disconnected, I touch my room key. I remind myself where I live. It sounds simple, but it works. As winter break approached, I reflected on the transformation our campus had undergone. The physical changes were obvious. New security systems, updated protocols, better lighting. But the cultural shift ran deeper. Students looked out for each other differently now. RAs were trained to see warning signs. Faculty knew how to refer struggling students. The counseling center had tripled its staff. The Sarah Fund had helped dozens of students avoid crisis. Yet challenges remained. The hypervigilance created its own problems. Some students felt constantly watched. Others learned to hide their struggles more carefully, afraid of triggering institutional response. We'd solved some problems while creating others. During the final week before break, another incident tested our systems. A group of students discovered someone had been living in the theater building's costume loft. Unlike Sarah or Sebastian, this person wasn't a student at all, just someone who'd found a warm place to sleep during increasingly cold nights. The discovery sparked heated debate about how to respond. Some wanted the person arrested for trespassing. Others argued for compassion, noting the parallels to student housing insecurity. Dr. McCatherine had to balance safety concerns with humanitarian ones. Sebastian proposed a middle ground. Campus security would remove the person, but also connect them with local homeless services. The theater building would be secured, but we'd also examine why someone had been able to live there undetected for weeks. The solution satisfied no one completely, which probably meant it was the right compromise. The person was removed safely, given resources, and helped to find emergency shelter. The theater's security was upgraded, but questions lingered about our responsibilities to the broader community beyond campus borders. As I packed for winter break, I thought about all the rooms on campus, hundreds of them, each potentially a refuge or a prison depending on who occupied it and why. Sarah had shown us how fragile our sense of home could be, how trauma could scatter us across multiple spaces in search of safety. The new systems weren't perfect. They couldn't prevent every crisis or catch every struggling student, but they represented an attempt to see each person as more than just a problem to be solved or a policy to be enforced. I ran into Robert in the parking lot as we both loaded our cars. We hadn't talked much about that night the previous year, but something in the moment made him open up. I still check my door 3 times before I shower, he admitted, and I can't leave it propped open anymore even for a second. His confession reminded me that Sarah's breakdown had traumatized others too. Robert had been violated in his own space, his sense of security shattered. The institutional focus on helping students in crisis sometimes overlooked the impact on those around them. I'm glad she got help, Robert continued, but I wish someone had asked if I was okay too. His words stayed with me during the drive home. We'd built elaborate systems to identify and help students like Sarah, but what about the Roberts? The ones whose rooms were invaded, whose safety was compromised, who carried their own quieter traumas. When I returned for spring semester, I found changes already underway. Dr. McCatherine had implemented support groups for students affected by others' mental health crises. Robert attended the first meeting, along with several students who'd found Sarah in their rooms. The groups revealed another layer of impact we'd overlooked. Students shared stories of guilt, fear, anger, complex emotions about wanting to help while also feeling violated. A junior described checking under her bed every night after finding someone hiding there during a psychotic episode. Sebastian facilitated these sessions with characteristic skill, validating both compassion and self-protection. You can care about someone's struggle while also acknowledging how it affected you, he told the group. Meanwhile, I received regular updates about Sarah's progress. She'd completed her first semester successfully, earning a B+ in sociology. Her mother sent a photo of Sarah holding her grade report, smiling genuinely. One class felt like enough, Sarah wrote in her next letter. Not too much to track, not too many rooms to remember. I'm taking 2 next semester, baby steps. Her recovery wasn't linear. She described bad days when she'd walk past dormitories and feel the old confusion returning. Days when she'd stand in her apartment doorway, key in hand, unable to convince herself it was really hers. But she had tools now, strategies that mostly worked. The campus continued evolving its response systems. Martinez's database had grown sophisticated enough to predict potential crises based on patterns. When 3 students from the same floor started missing classes simultaneously, the system flagged it for intervention. The intervention revealed they were all struggling with the death of a mutual friend from high school. Early support prevented what might have become 3 separate crises. The system worked, but it also felt invasive to some. Big Brother is watching became a common joke among students. But beneath the humor lay genuine concern about privacy and autonomy. How much monitoring was too much? When did support become surveillance? These questions dominated campus discussions throughout spring semester. The student government proposed a Bill of Rights regarding mental health interventions. Dr. McCatherine welcomed the input, working with student leaders to refine policies. The resulting document balanced institutional responsibility with individual autonomy. Students had the right to refuse non-emergency interventions. They could opt out of certain tracking systems, but the college retained the ability to act when immediate safety was at risk. As graduation approached, I prepared to leave a very different campus than the one I'd entered 4 years ago. The Sarah incident had catalyzed changes that rippled far beyond our small college. Other institutions had adopted our protocols, learned from our mistakes, implemented their own versions of the Sarah Fund. During my final RA meeting, I was asked to speak to the incoming senior RAS about maintaining perspective. I thought about what to say, how to convey the weight of responsibility without overwhelming them. You'll see students at their worst, I told them, lost, confused, sometimes dangerous to themselves or others. Your job is to remember they're still people, not problems, but also remember that you're people too, not saviors. The system exists, so you don't have to carry it all alone. After the meeting, Martinez pulled me aside. He'd been offered a position at a larger university, helping them develop their own comprehensive response system. He was torn about leaving. This place made me better at my job, he said, but maybe it's time to spread what we've learned. His departure would be a loss, but I understood. The Sarah incident had changed us all, opened our eyes to responsibilities we'd previously ignored. Some of us would stay and continue the work here. Others would carry the lessons elsewhere. My last official duty was helping with spring room inspections. As I walked through empty dorms, checking for damage and abandoned belongings, I thought about all the students who'd lived in these rooms. Some had thrived, others had struggled. A few had broken completely. In one room, I found a note tucked behind a desk. For whoever lives here next, it read. This room saved me. I hope it's good to you too. No signature, no explanation, just gratitude for a space that had provided refuge. That's what we'd learned from Sarah, that rooms could be more than just physical spaces. They could be sanctuaries or prisons, homes or hiding places. Our job was to help students find the former while preventing the latter. The day before graduation, I received one final letter from Sarah. She'd decided to transfer to a 4-year college in the fall. Not back to our campus, too many ghosts, but somewhere new. She was ready to try living in a dorm again, just one room, properly hers. I'm terrified, she wrote, but my therapist says that's normal. The difference is now I know what to do when the fear gets too big. I have people to call, strategies to use, medication that helps. I won't need everyone else's rooms because I'll have my own. She thanked me again for that night, for seeing her as a person in crisis rather than just a problem to remove. Her words reminded me why the work mattered, why the systems we'd built were worth the challenges they created. Graduation day arrived sunny and warm. As I walked across the stage, I spotted Dr. McCatherine in the audience. She nodded slightly, a recognition of all we'd accomplished together. The campus would continue evolving after I left, facing new challenges, refining its responses. After the ceremony, I found myself walking past the library one last time. The basement windows were barely visible now, covered with decorative latticework, but I knew the space behind them had been transformed into a meditation room, a quiet place for students to ground themselves when the world felt too chaotic. It seemed fitting. The place where Sarah had hidden from her trauma had become a space for others to face theirs. Not perfect, but purposeful. Not a complete solution, but a step toward healing. As I loaded my car for the final time, Sasha approached. She'd be a senior RA next year, carrying forward the work we'd started. She had questions about maintaining boundaries, about avoiding burnout, about helping without enabling. I gave her the best advice I could, knowing she'd learn her own lessons through experience. The systems would help, but ultimately it came down to seeing each student as an individual, each crisis as unique, each intervention as a chance to do better than before. Driving away from campus, I thought about Sarah starting fresh at a new college, Robert learning to feel safe in his own room again, Alexander mentoring students who reminded him of himself, and all the unnamed students who'd been helped by systems born from tragedy. The girl who'd lived in everyone's room had taught us that belonging was complicated, that home was as much psychological as physical, that institutions had responsibilities beyond education. We hadn't solved the problem of student mental health. That was too big for any single college, but we'd stopped pretending it didn't exist. As the campus disappeared in my rearview mirror, I felt the weight of 4 years lifting. The work would continue without me, systems evolving, new crises emerging and being addressed. Sarah's legacy lived on in every intervention, every early detection, every student who got help before needing to create elaborate delusions to survive. She'd wanted to go home that night, confused about which room was hers. In the end, she'd helped us all understand that home wasn't just about having the right key to the right door. It was about feeling safe enough to stay in one place, supported enough to face what hurt, and seen enough to ask for help before losing yourself completely. The road stretched ahead, leading away from the place that had shaped me. Behind me, a campus continued its imperfect work of caring for imperfect people in an imperfect world. It wasn't enough, but it was so much more than before. And sometimes, that's all the resolution we get. Not a perfect ending, but a better beginning for those who come next.